It's time now for Health Fitness Broadcast with Sherri, a show covering the hottest fitness topics and latest health issues. And now, here's your host, Sherri Horner.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the show, and I want to introduce you to someone very special, Steve Brown. He's a triathlete, an author, a father, a husband, and a cancer survivor, and he is now a big part of the Health Fitness Broadcast team as one of our blog writers. I'd like to welcome you, Steve. Say hello to the world.
Sherri, thanks very much. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Oh, it is. It's great to have you again.
Am I really all those things that you just said?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You are an inspiration to so many people, and we're going to talk about your blog. But I want to talk about when I first interviewed you a few years ago, and you really do make a difference in people's lives. And the day that we did the first interview, I was able to meet one of your daughters. You have three?
That's right. I have two daughters, actually.
Oh, two. Okay. Well, I was giving you another one. Surprise to your
wife.
wife.
We're good at them by now, so
yeah.
We'll take another one.
Okay. Very, very, very sweet girl, and she must be a daddy's girl because the way she was just looking at you during the interview was very special.
That is so funny that you just said that because I'm staring at a picture frame on my desk right now.
Yeah.
It says daddy's girl.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So anyway, your blog, I want to encourage everyone to visit Steve's blog, and he will be discussing triathlons and endurance sports and a little bit of information. I want to give everyone a background on you, Steve, because you're not new to sports. You were a lifelong athlete, always healthy and fit, and you got a soccer scholarship?
That's absolutely right. Yep. I'm one of those kids that was just, would even as a young kid would take to the streets on his bicycle with a baseball glove over the handlebar and a basketball between the frame and a soccer ball under his arm and just kind of go and that's how I would spend my day. I mean, I was a complete jock from the time I could toddle around, I think.
That's good. So you got a baseball glove when you were born.
Was
that your dad?
Probably, yeah.
So you were always involved in sports. When did you get started in your first triathlon?
Yeah, I remained active and remained a soccer player even post-college. And then when I was in college, a little bit of a light switch went off, and a friend turned me on to running for the sheer joy of it, and not necessarily for just the training factor of it. And that's when I really started to understand that this can be a really therapeutic and really a way to recharge yourself. So I fell into the running realm at that point, and then it was a few years post college that a friend of mine just said, "Hey, I'm doing this little triathlon thing. Would you like to join me?" Well, I knew what the sport was, but I certainly didn't envision myself doing one. So I was a little taken back, but I went, and I'll tell you what, the world that opened up for me once I stepped onto that first course back in the mid to late 80s, I can't even begin to tell you what it did for me. I mean, I just felt like I was the door open to a whole new subculture or a whole new existence for me.
And this is what you were meant to do. This was your thing. You mentioned running for pleasure, and I want to, through you and your blog, encourage people to run for pleasure because for some people it's a chore. It's not pleasurable. Can you talk about breaking past the sticking point when you get that natural high, and when you talk about therapeutic, of course, the benefits afterwards?
Well, the thing people need to realize is that it's a process. You're not going to just say, I'm going to be a runner today, and you're not going to take to the streets and all of a sudden bang out 5 miles effortlessly. You're going to have a learning curve the same way you will if you choose to play the piano, if you choose to become a chef, if you choose to knit. I don't care what the activity is. You need to be okay with the development process, and you need to be aware that it's going to take some time. There's going to be a curve, and you're going to have ups and downs as you work through that. The biggest thing I hate to hear from people is they'll say, "I would love to run, but I just can't run." And I look at them like, well, what do you mean you can't run? I'm staring at your 2 legs. I see you walk around the room. Obviously, you can run. should you choose to. So you just need to understand that it's a process and work through that process and be okay with sucking wind a little bit when you first get started and needing to take some walking breaks and needing to go through it.
Mm-hmm. That is a great tip. It's a process. Remember that. It's a process. So you started in the mid-'80s. You started running, or that was your first triathlon?
I think it all kind of happened at once.
Okay.
I think it was the Big Bang Theory.
All right.
I remember doing a whole lot of things kind of all around the same general time frame. I couldn't get enough of it.
Okay. So you were addicted.
I was.
What? About how old were you when that?
That would have put me in my late 20s.
Okay.
Mid to late 20s.
Wow. So that's encouraging that people think, well, I'm already in my 30s or 40s, and you can begin at any time. It's never too late.
You can begin in your 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
I would like to not wait that long, but anything's possible.
So with your first triathlon, what was it like? Of course, you trained in different areas, and take me back to that day when you woke up that morning. Okay, it's show day. How did you feel?
Clueless.
Yeah.
Yeah, I showed up. I didn't even have a bicycle back then, so I had borrowed a bike from a friend. I wore some cast-off soccer clothes because that was what I was doing at the time. I was still, a competitive soccer player. I didn't have a bike helmet, so I wore a skydiving helmet because that was my other passion of the 80s. And I kind of showed up on race morning like, okay, I might look like an idiot, but here goes nothing. And I like I said, I was immediately taken back. I think once the gun went off and we actually got into it, everything, the fog lifted, and it's like I've realized that this is an incredibly supportive and an incredibly cool environment, and the camaraderie amongst athletes is what drew me to the sport instantly. Not so much the physical challenges, because that's an important factor, and that also keeps me coming back. But it's the people, and it's the people from day one that was the biggest attraction for me.
Very encouraging of one another and not competing, so to speak.
Absolutely, everyone kind of competes amongst themselves, and there's always competition. It's a sport. That's always going to be the case, but it's not the kind of cutthroat, take no prisoner mentality that you might think.
Mm-hmm. So triathlons, you're hooked now, right? But you also race over 20 marathons?
That's correct.
So
I think 20 is the magic number at this.
So this love did not end quickly. It's still ongoing, right?
It's funny because I remember New Year's Eve. I kind of started gradually with distances. I started with very short course things, shorter course triathlons, 5Ks, 10Ks, short course bike rides, and then everything just built from there. And I remember New Year's Eve dinner, 1993, sitting with my wife saying, I just need to do one full-distance marathon to get it out of my system. And, of course, she was fully supportive and all for it and said, okay, great, what do we need to do? Did you pick out a race? Well, like I said, that was 20 marathons ago, so she didn't put a whole lot of credence in my words in about 99 when I said I just need to do one full-distance Ironman just to get it out of my system. She just looked at me and said, don't even try that.
But you did. So if you can explain what the full-distance Ironman triathlon is.
In a word, it's insanity. No, I'm kidding. Ironman is the quintessential brass ring of the sport. It consists of a 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile bike, and then a full marathon, 26.2 miles. And
do they come in that order?
They come in that order,
okay.
Yep. And the other question I frequently get is, yes, they're all done the same day.
Wow.
You don't get to do it over a nice long weekend or anything like that.
And you don't have any team players, so you have to do the whole thing. You can't trade off, or
no,
can you?
There's no relays and that
okay.
kind of thing. Although some of the more relaxed events are starting to lend themselves more towards that. But
mm-hmm.
but in my opinion, if you're going to do Ironman, do it.
Right.
Do it all.
The whole thing.
Yep. And it opened doors for me. It was an incredible experience, and it continues to be an experience. And I've done
You've done how many Ironman?
11 now at this point.
Wow.
And
Great.
it will remain the one staple on my race calendar each and every year. I've got to do an Ironman. I've got to do a marathon.
That is great.
The rest of the things we kind of fill in as we go, but there's a couple of anchors that just are constants.
What makes Ironman so special?
You know what? I'm gonna come back to the people again, because the support that I received when I first made the decision to race an iron distance race. I chose the event. I actually registered for the event an entire year ahead of time, which is pretty common because they sell out quickly, and you need that much time to mentally and physically prepare, at least for the first couple that you do. During that time, I had subscribed to a number of, like website discussion forums, especially with the particular race that we were doing. It had a whole loyal following of athletes who would just post comments and correspond to one another through the website. I felt like I had dozens of friends before I even showed up on race day, who were all committed and signed up to do this race, so that when we actually met on race day, I was already welcomed into a family that I was meeting for the first time face-to-face.
Right. That is great. I just want to interrupt it real quick and say that your blog, you are that to others now, that they feel like that you are family, and you have really made them feel welcome and inspiring them.
Because that is, if I accomplish nothing else, if I can be that for somebody, that's to me that's the ultimate.
Absolutely. And on that note, just want to encourage everyone to visit Steve Brown's blog on Health Fitness Broadcast. Before I interrupted, you were saying...
What was I saying?
The day that you showed up, you had already had a family.
Oh, you're right. I had already had, such a close-knit family, and then the support that we were able to give each and every athlete on race day. I mean, Ironman is a long, long day. You have to understand that the winners and the elites and the pros are going to do it in under 9 hours. The course closes in 17 hours. So you're going to have the majority of the mortals out there in the world racing for 14, 15, 16, even up to the 17th hour. So,
wow. That's
you
a lot.
See a lot of dark things when you're racing for that long. But
now, you mentioned before that you want to bring me over to the dark side of triathlons. Was that a joke? What are you talking about?
Kind of, but I mean, I feel like it's a little bit of a cult, at least on the Ironman side. People look at it like, "Oh, you're one of those." But I'd say it jokingly because it's not. It's the exact opposite. It's true. It's an incredibly welcoming and uplifting environment to be in. But people look at it as if, I don't know, it's some twisted, goofy. I don't know what.
Because it takes so much commitment and dedication, and most people don't. They struggle with that. They don't have it. Right?
I guess. Yeah, that's probably has a lot to do with it.
Well, I do want to talk about something that's not so cheerful in the beginning, but it does end with a great story. In 2006, you were diagnosed with leukemia. So
the date that is forever embossed in my head, February 24th, 2006. Yep.
What was that like when you were told?
I'm sitting in the office of an oncologist that I had known for exactly 1 week, hearing him confirm all these test results that I had taken in the previous week, and then heard him say that what I had was chronic lymphocytic leukemia. And I kind of tuned out the first two words a little bit because I just kind of wanted to hurry up, get to the chase, figure out what's wrong with me, let me take a pill, move
Fix
on,
it.
be done. Yeah, I got to
fixed.
get back, I'm busy. But then when the word leukemia came out, I choked on that one a little bit. Like, wait, that word I know. What are we talking about here? So, yeah, it hit me like a truck. But the prognosis was good. It was caught relatively early. The treatment protocols for this particular type of leukemia were decent, as long as I was able to handle the recommended drugs. So it was an adjustment. It was just one of those things. But I try to live my life with the understanding that you can't walk around hoping and praying that nothing's ever going to happen to anybody, because that's not reality.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff's going to happen.
Yeah.
But what you can hope and pray for is that you'll have the right mindset, you'll have the right sense of calm, sense of clarity to be able to make sound choices after that stuff does happen. So
mm-hmm.
I tried to just rely on that.
Absolutely. I also want to mention that you actually used your fitness training as a tool in your treatment, and that is so inspirational to so many people. Tell us how you did that. I mean, mentally, how did you just turn that around and say, I'm going to beat this stuff?
I think there's a part of me, there's many reasons why I did what I did, and I'll try to explain a couple of them. First of all, one of the hardest things of my diagnosis was then leaving the office, going home to my daughters, and telling them that I had leukemia. I mean, we had a horrible several months, half a year leading up to that point. So when we flipped the calendar over to 2006, we were ready for a fresh start. That's not the fresh start that I had in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that was very difficult for me. But I figured, okay, I don't know that much about leukemia. I'm learning as I go. I don't know that much about an oncologist, but I'm getting to know him. I'll get to know my treatments. What I know is health and fitness. What I can control is my outlook and how active I remain through this. So that was part of it. I wanted to set tempo. I wanted to send a message. I wanted my kids to say, Dad can't be that bad. I mean, he's running in the middle of his treatments. So his life is still being relatively normal as far as they know it. So that was part of it. That was important to me.
Mm-hmm. So you ran home from your treatments
I would run home from many of the chemo treatments. Now, understand, we're not talking about a 10-mile run, across the desert or anything like that. It was only a couple of miles, but it was, from a psychological standpoint, it was huge for me because I'd play little mental imagery games along the way, and I would really feel empowered that I kind of looked at the leukemia cells as if they were falling off me on the side of the road
mm-hmm. and
giving up because they're thinking, this guy's nuts. First they zapped us with all that chemo stuff, and now he's running. I can't hang with him. I'm out of here.
Mm-hmm. So, that's great. Yeah, I've heard of quite a few people that do that they visualize it going away with
helps.
each step. Mm-hmm.
And to be honest with you, sometimes I like being a little bit of I don't know. I like pushing buttons a little bit just for the sake of pushing buttons. So it was kind of fun. I'll tell you, it was kind of fun to get up from the chemo chair, lace up my running shoes, and have the nurses look at me and say, honey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I felt like, I'm going to run. Watch me,
Yeah.
You felt, like I said, in control.
That is cool.
In a situation where everything else was kind of uncontrollable.
That is so cool. So just 4 months later, you're back in a triathlon?
Yep. Let's see. February. I started treatment in March of 2006. I was back racing shorter distance races by May, and I had finished an Ironman again by September, 7 months after my diagnosis.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. And that is inspirational because a lot of people that want to train for a triathlon and think, I'll never be able to do this, and then just look at you and say, well, if he can do it, then there's nothing stopping me.
There's so many things that people can do. It discourages me to hear of people place these self-imposed limitations on themselves when they just need to, if they'd open their mind a little bit, the body always follows. There's so many things that they're capable of doing that they don't realize.
Mm-hmm, absolutely, and that's where your blog comes in. It's so helpful in motivating people that are just getting started or people that have been running marathons for a long time, but each year they have a different one to train for. Also, your coach athletes through the Leukemia Lymphoma Society's team in training. And can you tell us a little more about that?
Sherri, that was kind of a natural progression for me because being involved in racing for so many years, I was well aware of that program because they're huge, and they you see them out in droves at any major race that you do. So I knew very well what the organization was, what their commitment was, how they raised money, how they operated. So then, come February 2006, I'm diagnosed. It was a slam dunk decision want to get on board and help out that organization any way I could. So a friend of mine connected me with the other coaches who were the triathlon coaches for my chapter in Eastern Pennsylvania. And literally within a week of my diagnosis, I was signing an assistant coach's contract to work with them. So then here I am sharing my passion for the sport with athletes who are very eager and very open and very accepting and want to learn. And then in turn, they're raising funds and awareness for my blood cancer. Mm-hmm. So it was just a perfect partnership. It was the perfect marriage from the very beginning.
Absolutely. And you're often called to deliver motivational talks on topics like endurance sports and cancer survivorship. So
and I love that, particularly with Team in Training. I will often do they have inspirational dinners the night before most of the major events. And I've been asked and really just to tell my story, and talk a little bit about my diagnosis and how endurance sports played a part, and really just shed whatever little bit of inspiration I can on some of the other athletes, and I absolutely love that because, like I said, you're just telling it like it is. You're just sharing your story,
and that's your book, My New Race, is about your story, and that's the one that, thank you for the gift that you gave me of that book, because I do reread it, and I'm like everyone else, and I get in a slump, and then I reread your book, and I think, gee, if he can do that, there's nothing, I have no limitations, there's nothing that I can't do. And I want to encourage everyone to visit your blog on Health Fitness Broadcast, and they can find out how to get a copy of that book for themselves. But you also have a couple other books, The Inner Triathlete.
The Inner Triathlete was actually used as a fundraiser for a gentleman that I had met. His name was John Blaze, a.k.a. the Blaze Man. And he was a young guy in his mid-30s who had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and he made the decision that he wanted to do the Ironman triathlon. So he was actually the first ALS patient to attempt and then actually finish the Hawaiian Ironman triathlon. Sadly, his condition took a radical decline shortly after that. The very next year, he was forced to watch the race from a wheelchair, and then a few months after that, we lost him. And the legacy that John Blaze left behind is just huge. If you visit blazemanfoundation.org, you will see the work that his family and his crew are doing on behalf of, in John's name and for ALS. What I did was a number of various articles, short stories, inspirational things I had written over the years. I just pulled them all together kind of under one umbrella and used that as a fundraiser for John's charity, for John's foundation. So that became the Inner Triathlete, and it's really just little excerpts of all things triathlon related. Again, pulled under one roof, just so we could try to spread the message for the Blaze Man.
That is so great. You're so great to do that. I want to mention some of the topics on your blog, and then you can give us some more. You talk about the Ironman triathlons, and then you also have inspirational stories of other athletes, like the one that you just mentioned, including your own experience, and, of course, Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. What are some other topics that you're able to do?
Yeah, I try to tie those particular topics together any time I possibly can. And every once in a while it may or may not be related to triathlon, but it may be something that just moves me. Sadly, when I'm as involved with leukemia and lymphoma as I am, not all stories are happy ones. Not all stories have the right ending that you would like to see. But sometimes you're touched by somebody that you become kind of close to, and unfortunately they lose their fight. So I'll talk about them as well. And sometimes I feel like some of my best writing comes from those situations where I'm moved the most. And it doesn't have to be. I'm not saying they're they're negative in any way. They still become positive pieces of work, but they're inspired by a loss.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll talk about them anytime somebody moves me. I will talk about an 80-plus-year-old nun who finishes the Hawaiian Ironman. I will talk about anything that moves me, with the understanding that I get the feeling that if it moves me, it's probably going to move somebody else as well.
Mm-hmm, absolutely, and you're very sensitive to that. Everything you write and everything you do is an inspiration, and I want to, again, encourage everyone to visit your blog on healthfitnessbroadcast.com, and I thank you again, Steve, for joining us. Steve Brown, triathlete, author, cancer survivor, and on the Health Fitness Broadcast team as one of our blog writers. I want to thank you again. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks very much, Sherri. It's a pleasure.